These are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Should You Move Your Finance Operations to the Cloud? Before we get started, just wanted to go over a couple quick ground rules for today's presentation. All phones have been placed on mute. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please put them in the questions tab, and we'll get to them as time permits here. At this point, I'd like to give an introduction of today's presenter, Dave Vianda. As a director in our business software advisory group, Dave works with prospective and current customers, partners, and firm clients to assess needs and opportunities for transitioning their finance systems to the cloud, either through business process outsourcing or company internal cloud solutions. Dave has more than 30 years of experience with finance systems and has overseen more than 250 successful finance system implementations. At this point, I'd now like to turn it over to Dave to begin today's presentation.
Hey, Jared, thanks very much, and welcome everybody on this beautiful morning. If we could take this outside, that'd be great. Again, thanks everybody for your time and attention this morning and for coming to our webinar. So today we're going to spend about the next 30 minutes answering the question, should you move your finance operations to the cloud? So let's take a look at our agenda. Jared already did the kind of introductions, but we'll do a quick overview. Next, we'll move on to the current state of where workers are and where finance systems are. We'll then have a discussion about remote worker productivity and some research that I've done in terms of are workers really more productive or as productive working remotely. Then we'll talk a little bit about your current systems and kind of what the configuration and infrastructure is. Then we'll drill down into some of the benefits that I've seen for our clients on cloud financial systems. We'll do some questions and answers, and then we'll wrap up and discuss next steps. So just to make sure you're all with us, can everybody just do a hand raise just to tell me that you're here and that you understand what we're going to try to cover over the next 30 minutes. Everybody give me a hand raise. Coming in fast and furious. Great. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right, Jared, next slide, please. So again, Jared did my introduction. I've been working with finance systems since, 1985. So what's that, 35 years? I'm dating myself, right? But the gray hair doesn't betray that, right? So again, I've been at Bloom Shapiro for the past 6 years. And I have been on the faculty of Bentley University, Babson College, and also Northeastern University. And I got my degree in accounting. I'm a CPA, but I also got a master's from Northeastern in technology commercialization. So I kind of have the dual interest of not only technology, but also the finance side as well. So next slide, Jared, please. All right, so let's talk about the current state of, I'm going to take the video off so that you can get the full screen effect with the slides. That's great. All right, let's talk about the current state of remote work. And let's take a look first at larger companies. I mean, we've never seen a transformation that workplaces have undergone in the past 6 to 7 months, right? I mean, the transformation has been unbelievable. I mean, I know us at Bloom, the pandemic came upon us all of a sudden. One day we're all working in the office, and then on March 13th or 17th or whatever the date was, everybody was remote. Everybody was shut down because we really didn't know what we were dealing with. And no one had a choice but to be remote. After the pandemic needed, you would have thought that people would kind of return to, with the way things were. But because of the nature of the pandemic, that wasn't the case. So let's take a look at what the current state of remote work is in larger companies. According to an article in Business Insider, 20 major companies going remote. In larger companies, they have moved more than 40% of their workforce remote. Companies like Indeed, Google, Uber, American Express, and Airbnb extended their work from home policies. In fact, Google's already publicly stated that they're not going to have people come back to work until mid-2021. So they are going to stay remote. Microsoft, again, a technology company that offers collaboration tools for remote work, had said they are going to allow offering remote work opportunities to their employees indefinitely. All right, so let's talk about, what so that is kind of what the current state of what companies are thinking about, large companies. But let's take a look at what their employees are saying. And interestingly enough, 50% of Americans, if they surveyed, want to continue remote work after the pandemic. And the companies after the pandemic want to make work from home permanent. So we've got a couple of different shifts. We've got this huge shift to, obviously, to remote work. And now it seems to be like people are thinking about maybe making it permanently. So a lot of companies, and also goes. And in a couple minutes, we're going to do a poll that'll take a survey of what the situation is in your company. Next slide, please, Jared. So obviously, one of the challenges that any company thinks about, if you're a company officer or a company C-level executive or an owner, is, are people from home being productive? Are they being productive, right? And you think about, well, I mean, if I can't, it's the old management by walking around, right? If you can't see that somebody's got their head down in their desk, are they getting things done? And what kind of feeds into that is a couple of different things. One is disruptions, right? I mean, raise your hand. How many people have been on a Zoom call and all of a sudden someone's child walks in or the dog walks in, et cetera, right? Let's see a hand raise here. How many people have had that happen during a hand raise? Yeah, we got several hands that went up, right? Absolutely, right? So disruptions are an issue, right? Is it an issue that you can't be heads down, heads down, working remotely and continue to work remotely? The next concern is face-to-face collaboration. Again, when you're sitting in the same room with somebody, you can get the sense of their body language, how they're going to resolve an issue. It seems to me that face-to-face collaboration allows you to do these kinds of things more effectively. But one of the big challenges is homeschooling. Right? There has been a tremendously disruptive shift in the educational market, right? Before, I mean, I had school-age kids. I don't anymore. My daughter's like 28, but people have school-age kids. Before, things were pretty reliable. They would drop them off at the bus at 7 o'clock, like I did. If they had my daughter played basketball and played a couple of the sports, they'd pick them up at 5 o'clock. The things are pretty normal. But with the whole education market, it just totally transformed. Some school districts are remote. Some school districts are doing a hybrid approach, 2 days on, 2 days off. Some school districts are in person. And that's okay, but the big challenge for remote workers is those things change. I mean, I helped out several years ago. I helped out a Catholic school in the neighborhood, and I was talking to one of their administrators, and within the span of 2 weeks, they went from on-site to hybrid to remote back to on-site. So it's these shifting homeschooling patterns that cause a challenge at remote work. Childcare. One of the big challenges in childcare is, with the protocols required by the current pandemic, et cetera, there are a lot of those secondary childcare places that couldn't do it anymore. So, I know a lot of people, somebody gets a license to take in 4 or 5 kids in their home to do childcare. Can't do it anymore because there's a whole bunch of requirements. They don't want to meet it, right? So that is a huge disruption, right? Finally, you think about, the different hours that people have to work. So let's say, for example, someone has to homeschool their child. I mean, I have a friend of mine, he's a professor at BU. He found out 2 days before school started that his daughter is going to be going remote to kindergarten. So between 9 and noon, he has to sit with his daughter, right? That creates a huge disruption in the hours. Most people, they driving to work, there's some flexibility, but pretty much from 9 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 4, somebody's there, right? And what employees need to accommodate this is the flexibility for these changing situations. And that's the problem with the current pandemic. It changes from day to day to day, right? So that is really where things stand as far as remote work challenges. So given all these challenges, are people more productive? Are people more productive? Let's take a look at some research that I did about productivity. Next slide, please, Jared. Interesting enough, a New York Times article, are remote workers more productive? You know, you would think that they're not as productive because of all the disruptions, but actually the opposite was true. One, Cisco found that their customer service teams are taking more calls and customers are more satisfied. Large insurance companies like Chegg did a survey, 86 of workers are as or more productive. They are seeing productivity gains. Now, one of the challenges is that, you know, what they saw in terms of that article and in my research is when the pandemic first hit, productivity zoomed up because people just stepped up and were more productive, right? However, as things went along, some of the productivity slipped. So the question is, how do you sustain those results? How do you sustain those results? And the way you do that is a lot of the new collaboration tools that are coming up. All right? I mean, Zoom went from a little used platform to the way that most companies communicate. Look at things like Microsoft Teams or you know, work stuff like Trello or Monday or project things like that. There are just a whole new suite of collaboration tools that are coming out, being introduced, and being used more and more. They do a fantastic job of fostering remote work, and they allow this remote worker productivity to be sustained. But let's take a look at, in the next slide, let's take a look at a survey that was done by the Boston Consulting Group. They did a survey of 12,000 employees, and they asked the question, were you as or more productive? And interestingly enough, what I just talked about collaboration really proved itself. In fact, on individual tasks, people, 75% of those surveyed felt they were as or more productive. And take it up to the managerial level, when someone is a manager, they believe that 65% of them believe they were as or more productive. It's a little bit different than what you would think, but you know, so the conclusion is remote workers so far are more productive. Why are they more productive? Because of flexibility. Instead of somebody having to work, you know, from 9 to 5, you know, people work odd hours. So let's say they have to homeschool their kids from 9 to noon, where they're working from noon to 6, having dinner and getting back on for dinner and working until 10, 11 o'clock at night. The other night, I sent somebody an email to a company about a personal issue. I got a response at 1:20 in the morning. That person was working at that time. So the flexibility is, and the ability to work at home is making people more productive. All right. Let's go to our first poll question, please, John.
Great.
Poll question is, what is the status of your company's offices? 1, all locations open and the workforce is returned. 2nd, all location open and partial workforce returned. And 3rd, office closed and workers remote. So please please just select one of those 3, and then Jared will show the results. Let's take a minute to do that.
Great. Looks like we've almost got everyone here. If keep it open for another 10 seconds here to get the last couple votes in.
Sounds great, Jared.
Great. I'm going to close and share that now.
So interesting enough, hold on. So about 50%, 60% said that all locations open and the workforce is returned. About 25, 30% said that all locations open and the partial workforce returned. And the difference is the office is still closed and workers remote. Well, okay, so now let's take another. We got a next poll question here. I want you to take a moment to think about, you know, in your opinion, you know, is your finance team or other teams as a more productive? What happened to productivity to your finance team during the whole pandemic? Now, this is from March until today. Did it improve, did it decline, or did it stay about the same? Let's take a minute and go through that poll question.
Great, keep it open for another 10 seconds or so here. Great, let's share these results here. Great. I'll go ahead and move us along here.
Sorry, Jared, I was on mute. Jared, go back to the previous slide, please. Sorry, I was on mute. I don't want to hear people drinking the water. Jared, can you tell me what the percentages are? Did it show it? Because it's not being shown on my screen.
Yeah, we've got 10% improved, 20% declined, and 70% stayed the same.
Okay, so basically, in your opinion, when your finance team moved remote, 80% either stayed the same or improved. So pretty consistent with the previous statistics we did in the previous survey we had. So the question is now, again, we are again faced with an incredible level of uncertainty, right? Right now we're seeing a surge again in the pandemic. People really don't know what is going to happen going forward. We don't know, are we going to have to close things down again? Depends upon where you are. I just read this morning that they closed Greece down again. They shut down Greece. So we really don't know where we're going to be as the winter months move forward. So I think it's important for us to take a look at, I want to share with you some of the benefits of moving your finance system to the cloud. But before I do that, I'd like to just kind of go over just some key factors and the type of infrastructure. So Jared, can you go to the next slide? So basically, and again, I've been in the finance system market since 1985. I think that was my first finance system implementation. Somebody was coming off of a manual green ledger. That's how long it was, right? So when I first started, they were all on a local area network. And what that means is that, you've got a server sitting somewhere, you've got people basically connected to that server, and they're all working off that same local server, right? But, when the pandemic hit, a lot of people went to what we call a remote connection, which is basically they put infrastructure in to allow them to connect via internet via a VPN or some secure connection to access that same server. And then the third approach is cloud, okay? So basically, again, first is locally networked, local. Second is connecting to it remote, and third is cloud. So let's take a look at our, cloud enabled is something like QuickBooks Online, right? So let's take a look at our next poll question, which is, where are your finance systems located? Are they in your offices? Are they at a network provider or access via remote, or are they cloud-based? Let's take a minute to go through those, please, and see where we end up.
Great, keep it open for just another few seconds here to get the last selections in. Great, thank you, everybody.
Share the results, Jared.
Yeah.
So it looks like what, 20% are locally network, 60% are through remote access tools, and 10% are cloud-based. Okay, all right, good. So again, what I'd like to do is, again, so that's pretty consistent. We're seeing a lot. Obviously, You know, if you've got QuickBooks running on a single computer when the pandemic hit, you were kind of, everybody had to move remote, you were kind of in a tough spot. So it would make sense to me that a lot of people are using remote access and not just remote local area network. So let's take a look at, I'd like to now go to the next slide and talk a little bit about the 3 different infrastructure approaches, and then talk a little bit about 3 particular elements of it. 1, level of security. 2, how to apply updates, and 3, how to apply backup. So let's talk first about the local area network. In a local area network, basically, the primary security is physical, right? Basically, it's in a locked closet, and the access is just based on your local area network. However, one of the challenges with this, level of security is that anybody on your network can potentially expose your server or data to bad people, hackers, and people that do ransomware. And all it takes is a click. I mean, I have a client of mine that called me up the other day. They got a ransomware attack. Somebody sent someone an attachment. They downloaded it. It executed its payload. It went to the server because it knew there was a map drive to the server, and it basically encrypted the server, and then they had to pay a whole bunch of money to basically remove that ransomware attack. The other thing is phishing attacks, right? The problem with a local area network security is primarily the company is responsible for protecting it against all these threats. And some companies have some level of sophistication. There are some tools that can help them, but at the end of the day, all it takes is one computer that antivirus software is not up to date that can make the whole thing fall apart. Somebody basically doesn't, they don't get a pushed update to their laptop. They log on, they click on the link, they don't have the right antivirus software version, and all of a sudden you're in a whole world of hurt, right? Let's talk about remote access. Now, remote access is now it depends upon your level of remote access. If you are using something like Citrix or something like, Microsoft Remote Access, you still are primarily responsible for security, just like a local area network. The only difference is that typically you put a virtual private network in front of it so that people from the outside can't access your data. But you're still subject to that risk. You're still subject to that risk where if somebody on the network clicks on the wrong link, it really compromise your data. When you're talking about the cloud has the strongest level of security for one very simple fact. If QuickBooks Online had a data breach, they're out of business. Nobody will trust them, right? So it's really, really important. They spend millions of dollars to go on and apply teams like White Hacker. They hire white hat hackers to see if they can break the security. They put all kinds of security protocols in place. Let's move to updates again with the 3 different approaches. Updates, you're responsible for installing them yourself, right? So, update comes down the pike, you got to do a backup, you've got to print out reports, you install the update, you got to reconcile. If you're running something like Dynamics, Microsoft Dynamics, which I have a lot of experience with. I did about 200 installations of that in a prior life. You got to go out and you got to apply the updates. I can't tell you the number of companies that I speak with that have a local area network that don't have their product up to date. And having a product up to date is the greatest protection against threats, right? Same issue, remote access. You're still dealing with that local server. Again, in a cloud-based scenario, you get a notification saying we're going to push updates at this time. The updates get pushed and it's done. It's automatic. But the third thing, and the thing that a lot of people don't talk about, backups are kind of like locks on your doors. You only need them when someone tries to break into your house, right? But the biggest challenge in backups I've seen in my career is that people take backups, but how many people test to see if the restore works? Right? Very, very few people, and I don't know what camp you're in, but again, locally network remote access, let's say, oh, my data is getting backed up every day to a separate cloud. Well, I've had multiple occasions where a client lost all their data, they went to go restore backup, and there was something wrong with the backup. And then they had to start from scratch. Or they got ransomware, and they went to go find a backup, and the backup was old. situations where they think the backup is running every day, but it's not notifying them. And guess what? Something happened. Let's say it happened to me. So I have a home network attached storage drive that I back up to Google, and it patched an update. It shut down my automatic backup. Luckily, a couple of days later, I went to look for a file on Google Drive, and it wasn't there, and I was able to solve the problem. But again, backups are a critical component, and in a cloud situation, the backups are completely remote, and completely automatic. Okay, so again, those are the three types of infrastructure. So going to the next slide, I'd like to now talk about some of the benefits of moving your finance systems to the cloud. All right, so now with that understanding, and again, this is just to kind of give you an exposure to some of the benefits you have, in addition to the benefits we just talked about. So let's take a look at the first one, Jared. Move forward 2 more slides, please. Next slide. Okay, so the first benefit of cloud-based financials is access anytime, anywhere. All right, and what that means is that all you need is a browser. All you need is a browser and a connection to the web. And the connection to the web doesn't have to be VPN'd or physically. It's got to be an HTTPS secure connection, but you don't need a virtual private network to access these things. You can take your phone over a cell network or your iPad over a cell network and access your finance system. In fact, one of our clients used to say that he could manage his entire business from the porch of his lake house because he can access it anytime, anywhere. So pure cloud systems, some people call their systems cloud, like some people put Microsoft Cloud on Azure. Like some people do QuickBooks remote, but they put it on Azure and they access it remotely. That's still your own database. It doesn't allow you the level of access you need to have. So the first benefit is access anytime, anywhere, on any device. With any operating system. You have a Macintosh, no problem. Does it have a browser? No problem. You have an iPhone running iOS? No problem at all. iPad? No problem at all. Next slide, Jared. The next thing that pure cloud solutions give you is real-time insights and the ability to slice and dice data. Again, most of the systems that are out there, the Dynamics and the Dynamics SL and GP are batch-oriented systems. And this is a harken back to the way systems were in the early 80s and 90s, where because they didn't trust the data, they basically created batches and they proofed the batches and they posted the batches. So again, a lot of companies with batch-oriented systems let's say they're going to put in their accounts payable bills and they're going to create one batch a week. Well, they put all the bills in, at the end of the week, they post a batch. Guess what? The level of visibility they have during the week is none. They don't really know what kind of bills are out there and what kind of cash flow requirements they need. Cloud-based financials are real-time financials. You get a bill in, you post it, it updates the system automatically. Next slide, please. The biggest benefit I see in cloud-based financials is it eliminates paper. Because of these real-time insights, a lot of the cloud financial products have dashboards like you're viewing here. And dashboards are real-time. So at the top here, you see some performance card indicators basically saying, what is the metric? What are the key metrics I need to do to run my business? What's the trend? Positive is green. You look at the one on the right side, it's a red, so that means it's negative, etc. But it's the elimination of paper, no more reports. One of our clients runs a 15-store restaurant chain, and he said that he used to get a couple hundred pages a day of reports dropped in his inbox. He went to a cloud-based finance system and he eliminated everything. Gets up in the morning, he comes into work, he opens up his dashboard, he looks at key trends that he sees that are concerning, clicks a button, drills down in the data, and answers his question. Again, that is another huge benefit of cloud-based financial systems. Next slide, Jared. The next one is reliable security. Again, these companies, if they had a data breach, would go out of business. So typically these companies, they have huge huge data centers. Data centers that the Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 use, right? They segregate the network to use to access the system with the data. They hire third-party testing companies. They monitor every threat, every denial of service threat, right? They force you to use a secure browser session, but most importantly, they use two-step authentication. And what that means is that if somebody were to do a phishing attack on your company and they were able to get a password, well, what two-step authentication does is that it looks at the browser session and IP address that you have. If it's different than the way you usually log in, it says, I'll send you a text message to confirm. Again, it's got the best security possible because if something happens, they will go out of business. Next slide. Again, backup and disaster recovery, it's real time. A lot of these large, cloud-based finance vendors, they have redundant data centers so that if, an earthquake were to take out data center number one, you would suffer no data loss because it's got a backup data center. Again, the individual company cannot afford, they can't afford, to have this level of disaster recovery and backup. But all you're doing when you get a subscription is you're renting it. It's kind of like if you wanted to create electricity, could you go build an electrical plant? No, it costs you millions and millions of dollars, right? But you buy the electricity as you use it. Same type of scenario. Next slide, Jared, please. All right, the other thing is collaboration in real time. A lot of these cloud-based financial systems have the ability to collaborate back and forth about a particular issue. And these issues come up all the time. So let's say a salesperson tries to book an order. The person is on credit hold. So what happens today without a cloud-based financial? Someone get out, they would send an email to the salesperson get back, forward the email to the controller, and you get this whole email chain, and then they decide to sell the product to this customer, right? Okay, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, they're going through their audit. Okay, why did you sell this product to the customer? Now you got to go back to 100,000 emails and try to locate those 3 emails. Most of these systems have collaborations attached to that record automatically, right? So it gives you the complete picture and it helps you track key information and it captures the dialogue and decisions for later reference right in the system of record. So all you do is you go to that sale record, click on the collaboration section, and you'll see the back and forth. Next slide. And here again is an example of, on the left side, you've got all these individual steps that are discrete and sit in different silos. And on the right, you've got a full record of the communication that was done should we accept this project. Next slide, please. All right, so I'd like to just kind of summarize. So we started up our webinar today with just getting you a sense of where things are as far as the current state. We had a discussion of remote work and productivity. We talked about the different types of infrastructure approaches to finance system, and we went through some benefits for cloud-based financial systems. So, Jared, you go to the next step. If you're thinking about maybe considering moving your financials to the cloud, just send me an email, and I'm happy to schedule a complimentary finance system assessment. We'll spend a couple hours. We'll talk about for a half hour on the phone. I'll get some sense of your system, where you are, what kind of other systems you're using, and see if it's possible for you to consider moving your financials to the cloud and what that would take. So we're offering that complimentary assessment. So go to the next slide, Jared, please. It's about 11:33, and I'd like to open it up for Q&A. You can see my smiling face again. Jared, do you have any questions so far?
So far, doesn't look like we've got anything in there. But again, if anyone does have questions, feel free to put them in the questions panel, and we'll get to them.
Yeah, we'll wait a couple minutes and then we'll wrap up. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Anything at all? The only thing I won't predict is what will happen to the Patriots this year. Can't do that. All right, well, if you have any questions, let me give you my email address. Send me an email anytime. It's dfionda, D as in David, F as in Frank, IONDA at bloomshapiro.com. Send me an email anytime if you want to just chat, if you want to schedule that assessment. If you have any questions later, happy to answer any questions for you. So again, just want to thank everybody. Next slide, please, John. Just want to thank everybody for their time and attention. I know that you've got a million things going on, and I really appreciate you taking this half hour to spend with us to talking about cloud financial systems. Any follow-up questions, you have my email. Thanks very much for your time and attention. Enjoy the rest of your day.